Okay, so we're going to start covering Section 2. Section 2 of Chapter 10 deals with party organizations. How are the political parties organized? Now that we've learned a little bit about the parties, let me get back to their correct slide. There we go. I believe that's it. Now that we've learned about a little bit of background information about political parties, how they form, the importance of third parties, and learned about coalition parties that exist in Europe. Now we're going to look at how are the parties themselves organized here in the United States. So our objectives: what are the committees that help major political parties and what are their responsibilities? Where do political parties get their money and why does Congress regulate political contributions? And how does the Federal Campaign Act regulate federal campaigns? Okay, so first of all, we have parties are broken down into committees. And these are the committees. They're the National Committee, the State Central Committee, and local committees. Now, as far as the National Committee, each committee, okay, these are some notes for you to take down. Each committee is headed by a chairperson, so it doesn't matter if it's the National Committee, the State Committee, or a local committee. The National Committee chairperson oftentimes is chosen by the presidential candidate. Now, members of national committees can be chosen one of three ways. Okay, one way they can be chosen is they can be elected by a state convention. They can be elected by voters in a state-wide election, or they can be chosen by the state central committee. Okay, so those are the ways that a person can be a member of the National Committee. Now I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint notes. Okay, national committees, what do? They set dates, rules, and locations for a national convention. National conventions are huge, huge events. Whatever city hosts a national convention, this is going to mean a lot of money for them. It's going to mean tens of millions of dollars are going to be pouring into this city. You're going to have thousands and thousands of people that are going to be attending these conventions. They're going to have a lot of prominent speakers that are going to attend. And then at these conventions is when each political party will officially nominate who their candidate for the upcoming election is going to be. And so you can see there's a great deal of importance that goes on in these conventions. And so choosing when it's going to be, the rules for it, and of course the location is very important. And oftentimes cities will actually vie for a spot to be able to host this convention. And there's a number of things that the National Committee is going to be looking for in a city. They have to have a place that's going to be large enough to hold the convention, a place that can hold, probably upwards of 10 to 15, maybe even 20,000 people indoors. A place that's going to have, you're going to have all these people coming to the city, so you're going to have plenty of places for people to stay. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to be flying in, so it's going to have a prominent airport. So that right there really narrows the choices down, and a lot of times it's your very large cities like Denver, Houston, Chicago, Philadelphia, are examples of places that have all hosted a national committee in the past. Then we go to the state central committee. These committees supervise operations within the state. So let's say, for example, just hypothetically speaking, Omaha is chosen as the site for a national committee. So the national committee person is going to be contacting the state central committee person, and they're going to say, hey, congratulations, your state's been chosen to host a national convention. The city's going to be Omaha. Now I've got to work with you hand in hand to make sure that this is going to be a success. So state central committee chairperson then is going to get involved. Then we're going to have the local committees. Local committees, they conduct the campaigns. They recommend appointments and candidates. They help raise money. They are crucial to the party's success. And I want to stress that right here, that the success of a presidential election is based upon how successful the local committees are. You know, you wouldn't think that the local committees would have a lot of say in success, but actually they are the ones that do. They're the ones that get out. They do campaigning. They're going to get on the phones, and they're going to call people up. If you're a registered Democrat, you're going to get calls from a local Democratic committee. They're going to remind you, hey, we have an election coming up. We really want you to get out and vote. You know, please make sure that you vote for your political party, whether that be Republican or Democrat. And so local committees are really going to be very, very important. Like it says, that the candidate success really hinges on the local committee. Okay, now next we're going to look at the money and regulations. Private contributions make up a large percentage of funds, and business, labor, who is it that's contributing this money? Business groups, labor groups, other groups are also going to contribute. Large fundraising events are held by each party. You will have events that are going to be held, for example, let's say that we have a presidential candidate and they're running for re-election. They've been president for one term. They're going to run for another term. Well, one of the things they will do is they might decide they're going to host a black tie affair dinner at the White House. You're going to have to be given an invitation. It's not just something that anyone can go to. And the main reason for that is they're probably going to charge $2,000, $3,000, maybe even $4,000 for a plate of food. So you and your spouse are going to go. Well, there's $6,000, $7,000 that you're going to pay just for that. Then when you get there, you're probably going to donate money, not necessarily to the candidate, but to the candidate's political party. Then of course you're going to have to stay there. You're going to have transportation. So people that are going to get invited are people that can definitely afford something like this. And then fear of corruption has prompted Congress to regulate the size of donations. People used to be able to just donate however much they wanted to, and what would happen then is, if a candidate wins an election and there's some individual or some group that's really donated a large sum of money to them, they're probably going to give that person or their company or group or whatever the case may be some special favors, just as a way of saying thank you for that large sum of money that you gave them. Now, there are some things that have been put in place by our government to make sure that this corruption does not happen. So in 1972, the Federal Election Campaign Act was passed to lessen the possibility of corruption. And the Federal Election Campaign Act limits the size of contributions and requires a report of donors. So just to give you an example, So if you contribute more than $200 in a year, your name has to be reported. Also, so the law also limits the amount of individual contributions to one, that should be 1,000, not 100. $1,000 in a primary election and $1,000 in a general election. Now, something else that is also in place is that there's what's called the Presidential Campaign Fund. And there's a large sum of money that is available. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to this tax form right here. And I want you to pay attention where it says Presidential Election Campaign Act, where I am moving the cursor around. It says check here if you or your spouse, if filing jointly, want $3 to go to this fund. Checking a box below will not charge your tax will not change your tax refund. So then you could put a mark for you and for your spouse. That means if both of you, if you mark it for both, there's $6. If just one, that's just $3. Now, here's the reason why this is so important. Millions of people file taxes every year, and if just half of those people click this box, that's millions of dollars that are going into this campaign fund. So if you're running for an election, that's money that is going to be available to you. However, here's the kicker though for that campaign fund. In order to have access to the money raised in the presidential So a candidate has to raise $5,000 from private contributions in 20 different states. Once a candidate does that, you are now going to have access to all of this money that's going to be there, and that's going to be a big deal. So the Presidential Election Campaign Fund gives public funds to qualified candidates who can then no longer receive private donations. So you have to think about it. Are you going to get more money, do you think, from private donations, or do you think you're going to be able to get more money from the Presidential Election Campaign Fund? And nowadays, the amount of money that presidential candidates spend on their election campaigns is huge. We're talking 20, 30, 40 million dollars. Okay, that is it for Chapter 10, Section 2.